I'm back just in time for a new preview of a new update release, which includes the Pale Garden, the Creaking, and everything else that we saw at Minecraft Live, and indeed in last week's Java Snapshot, but now it's finally here on the Bedrock version. We can ask and answer some of the biggest questions you have about how it's different, and let's be honest, in some ways it's better, and some cases, a little bit worse. But first, I have an important announcement straight from Mojang, because attention Android players, today's patch was mistakenly released from our beta builds. Until this is reversed, we recommend that you do not update until further notice. If you've already updated, do not open any worlds, and the reason this is an official announcement is they accidentally rolled out this update, the one I'll be showing you today, for all mainline players on Android, which means if you open any worlds after downloading this update, you will have those worlds bricked until the update rolls out in about 6 to 7 weeks, maybe a bit longer. Something very important to keep in mind, and something Agent Mindstorm has tested with the Timeless Adventures, by the way, fun little plug there, but he is the person I heard this from, so give him credit, but also make sure that you keep this shared with anyone you know who plays Minecraft on Android, because otherwise they might have a very bad time if they update the game. Speaking of updating the game, in a few weeks we'll be able to do that, and included in that we'll find all of the features that they revealed at Minecraft Live this year. For a very brief reminder, as well as a showcase of these on Bedrock, let's show you what's coming in the winter drop. The Creaking and the Creaking Heart. This is one of the weirdest mobs to show off, by the way, because obviously, as you all know, the Creaking is a brand new mob that spawns from the Creaking Heart, and it's really hard to show off with a spawn egg, because if you summon it from one, it doesn't work in all of the same ways. But one of the behaviors you'll probably be familiar with is the fact that when you look away, it can walk towards you until you look at it, at which case it stops. Fun fact, by the way, if you put on a car pumpkin, it works the opposite of the way an Enderman does, where he'll still come at you anyway. So if you want to have a much less effective time fighting these, make sure you get a car pumpkin. But yeah, they are unkillable in survival unless you spawn them from a spawn egg, one of the weird quirks of this mob versus many others. Speaking of weird quirks of mobs, let's talk about the Pale Gardens biome, the place where you'll find pale oaks, pale moss, pale hanging moss, as well as all of the fun things to do with the Creaking. And let's show you a good example of what it would be like if you're hanging out here, because you might just be coming home and then realize, oh god, the Creaking Heart has spawned Mr. Boo over here, and Boo is there to defend my chest full of whatever the opposite of valuables is. Do not open, I am warning you. Oh god, he is even worse than you could have imagined. But more seriously, yeah, the Creaking will spawn in this biome, not because of the biome necessarily, but because of the Creaking Hearts, which are found around here when it spawns naturally, which is a very interesting thing if you ask me. Speaking of interesting things, pale oakwood blocks, this is all of them, and this is the main thing that most people are excited about for this update, because there is a little survival horror aspect to the brand new Creaking and his Creaking Heart, and really the biome itself, but the new wood type is one of the most sought after we've seen in Minecraft for a very long time. I love birchwood personally, I think it's one of the best looking sets, and I think this supplants it as being one of the coolest ones to use, and especially if you're looking for something that has that kind of creepy vibe, this is great for that. Speaking of creepy vibes, make sure to subscribe if you want more of those from this channel. Is that a good sales pitch for subscribing? It's definitely not, but you better believe we don't do anything like that here on this channel, because I would rather share what's actually going down in an update, and in this case, I have to say, I want to be a real big fan of what you're seeing here, but outside of the blocks and outside of the things that we saw at the holiday update, I want to say that there are some weird things that have gone down. Obviously, this is a beta and preview, but some of these are just strange. So, by the way, here is a lovely house. What could be inside? I think I'm going to shut that door as I show you the wet sponges, because wet sponges, sponges now place a sound when absorbing water, so listen carefully. Nice noise, right? However, at the exact same time they did that, they made one of the most uncanny blocks in the game, because listen to what it sounds like when you place a wet sponge now. Did you listen carefully enough? It's gone. There's no sound. They just removed the sound altogether. More positive changes would probably be that of making it so that swords can now chop bamboo saplings instantly. Look at this right here. Very, very satisfying. And also the fact that note blocks above a heavy core will play the correct sound. So this is the one it's meant to be. Very, very, very satisfying in my opinion. But also a fun way to get more uses out of your spare heavy cores. Let's be honest, I only need one mace in my survival world. You probably too. And yeah, so to balance out the sword buff for the bamboo saplings, there is a nerf to the sword for every other block. Lots of blocks were slightly faster when using the sword than by hand. Indeed, I had to reference this in my ultimate guide this week on tools and weapons, but that has been changed in this update, and so when it rolls out by the end of the year, so too will the advice to use a sword over your fist, which I think makes sense, but it is a bit of a sad thing, because it's a very small bonus that you just had to know about to take advantage of, but also stone and polished blackstone buttons no longer require a pickaxe to drop, so if you break these with your fist, you'll you'll get them back. Personally, there aren't many people using polished black stone buttons that would break them with their fist, but I think the stone button is one that I just think this is a great example of. It makes sense in my opinion, and I'm glad they've done it. Also, respiration now reduces drowning damage speed. This one's pretty fun, but the next one is going to be the craziest, right? So this is great. Look at this. I'm in the water, and respiration is reducing my drowning damage speed. That is actually pretty cool. Let me see what that looks like. So presumably before it was reducing the rate at which your bubbles drained. You can see now I'm losing those much faster. But it's also going to reduce my drowning damage speed? That is a wild claim, and, you know, given we're about to jump into the most controversial one in this update, I think it's worth bearing out how this works. So now I'm going to be drowning at 1 heart every second or so. I put this on. Oh, and now the drowning damage is only as often as I would lose a bubble, which is much, much slower. Which means even because we're on Bedrock, we can't heal fast enough to counteract this, but it does mean that if you eat good food, you can now almost, you know, like heal about half as much as you take in damage, meaning you can survive underwater for 4 times as long plus double as long. So really close to 8 times as long underwater, even with no breathing whatsoever. That's a game changer. I love that change so much that I won't even talk about the negatives of this next one, because players will now keep inventory when on easy or peaceful. It doesn't actually seem to work. My editors have tested a few times. I was in the air. I literally just got off my plane as I'm recording this video. I'm going to perform my own tests in a fairly basic scenario, but in a world which was already not on one of these difficulties and you switch it to the other ones, it doesn't work at all. If you switch a world from one of those difficulties to another one, there's some weird bugs there too. It doesn't quite work, but the idea from the changelog is that, yeah, they think that on peaceful and easy, they want to make it so that you can keep your inventory when you die, because one of the biggest problems with difficulty in Minecraft is that when you die, you lose your stuff, and so why not have peaceful and easy players keep their inventory? It sounds like a really great decision on the surface, but it makes a really weird delta between easy, normal, and hard in my opinion, and I think that the logical way to do this is that on peaceful, you should have keep inventory enabled, because the game mode is basically there to turn off most of the challenge and some of the reward, and then have easy, normal, and hard exist along a spectrum like they do for the main feature it tells you about when you create a new world and look at the difficulty. It tells you that the hunger bar depletes and drains health down to 5 hearts on easy, down to half a heart on normal, and down to 0 hearts, that is to say death, on hard. You should do something similar with keep inventory if you want to make the inventory part of the difficulty, rather than just saying these two have it enabled and these two don't. What if on easy you have the ability to, or rather on peaceful, you keep your entire inventory. On easy, you keep just your hotbar. On normal, it's just how it is right now, where it all falls after your death. And maybe on hard, all of your items vanish, or they vanish a little bit faster. Or you could have something like that where there is some challenge to each of these, because then it might encourage you to use some of those niche items, like the respawn compass, which is going to take another dent if they just say, yeah, easy should have keep inventory built in. Speaking of keep inventory built in, given that I'm on the world select screen anyway, let's load up a brand new world. I have heard some good things about the spooky forest seed. This is meant to be, spawning a spooky mansion seed. This spawns you next to a current woodland mansion, and I'm curious what it will look like if we load it up after this update, given there is a line in there about changing the way that spawn locations work. In 1.20, 1.50, there will be a brand new spawn location on some seeds, which should be better balanced, and so let's load this up on easy and see how keep inventory actually works. With a question mark, because it's not necessarily perfect right now. So first things first, let's see what happens when I die on easy difficulty. I just heard an enderman teleporting around in the background, so I know that I definitely am playing on not peaceful, and I'm going to just jump straight off the mansion towards this chicken, which I'll kill right now, or rather I won't kill, and here I have my empty locator map back. Now we're going to open that map, and I'm going to try and pick up an item on the way towards the ground. Let's say we actually can kill this chicken. I definitely cannot. As you can see, my map is being kept. However, if I then switch to normal difficulty, and then I jump off again, I'm going to confirm that my map goes away. That should in fact happen, right? There we go. And then we switch back to easy. Okay, here's a piece of stark stone wood stairs, and as you can see, it vanishes. So you keep inventory on only until you first turn it off, or first turn off easy, at which point it stays gone forever, which is a very, very, very weird system, but we can put that down to it being a beta or a preview. But just for now, I want to say that I think Mojang shouldn't implement a cheat. It is literally called a cheat in the current game. into the base of a game mode, because I think if only because of the fact that it will encourage people who currently play normal and hard to switch. You know, I think some people play that with Keep Inventory. They might want to switch down just to avoid the cheats, which means there's only going to be one difficulty for a lot of people. And also, I just think that if it's such a pain to die, Mojang should work on fixing that in ways that aren't just you keep your entire inventory, but that's just kind of my take. Speaking of my take, apparently this seed, I heard from Harrison, it's really good when you go to the nearest Pale Garden, so let's find where that is. Oh look, it's such a ridiculously tiny biome. You can see too that it's surrounded by so many other ones, meaning that if you are looking for a Pale Garden seed to check out, this one might be pretty decent because it's not that far away from spawn. Also, wait a minute. I think I recognize this Pale Garden. I reckon I was here just a few seconds ago talking to you about signs, which I'll take as a sign to tell you about the withers no longer moving during its spawn animation. Don't worry, you can still trap it in Bedrock. Also, some of these settings tabs have been reordered. Oh, that's very exciting. You know what else is exciting? The new GUI slider for playing sleeping percentage. So yeah, if you look over here, you can see these are in a slightly different order than they were before, and also you'll be able to see this brand new slider, which I love as a GUI feature. You can now set the player sleeping percent in each of these as easily as you want to. This does count as a world cheat still, whether or not it's behind a slider, but it means that if you want to change it on the fly, you don't need to know the command, which is like game rule player sleeping percent 63. You just pick the percent you want right here. I would say from a GUI perspective or from a player experience perspective, you don't need to have this go so granular. I think that who needs 44%, not 43, not 44? I think if you set this down to every 10% or every 5%, you would cover 99.99% of scenarios and make it seem a lot less confusing. But I guess the one benefit of this way is you can set 49% or 51%, which is how shares in companies work, I guess, and maybe people like that. But you know what else people like? The fact that there are evokers and vindicators no longer attacking pillagers. Vexes summoned by an evoker will now take damage after 30 to 119 seconds. And finally, foxes can now pick up bundles. Yeah, that's great, isn't it? Speaking of things that are great, I have one more thing I'd like to show you, because I'm sure you can notice by yourself but did the fox pick up its own spawn egg over the bundle? Fine, sure, that's a thing. But yeah, rather than talking about this, which is a big feature to Mojang it seems, I'd rather talk to you about something else I find interesting, which isn't just the color as we go in and out of the Pale Garden. Look at that sky dramatically changed just as we even fly over the biome, by the way. Absolutely bizarre. Very, very cool feature. But let me talk to you about the fact that this is a 1.21.50 beta / preview, and it contains the Creaking, the Pale Forest, etc., all not behind experimental gameplay. I did mention in my most recent video talking about this that the odds were that this would be 1.22 because this is the development pattern Minecraft have used in the past, but it does seem as though this update will definitely release as a sub-update, as a drop-style update, which means that it won't be 1.22. This is something that a lot of people have raised the possibility of, and so, I want to admit that we were wrong about our guess right there, but it also means that this is good news for Java modders, because instead of having to reversion mods for 1.22, as I understand it, 1.20, as it will likely be called there, won't have to deal with that. I think that is a good thing. Again, you'll have to clarify if you're a Java modder, but for everyone else, it just means the version numbering is a little bit more wordy, and also it means that it's likely that Mojang are going to stick with their major version numbers, 1.22, etc., but just a little bit longer. We might go more than a year between 1.21 and 1.22, and that 1.21.60 or 70 might also be another fairly big drop with lots of fun new features. But yeah, that then means that the size of this particular update is probably about what we see right now. They're going to spend the next 3 or 4 weeks just ironing out some of these features to do with, say, keep inventory, hopefully removing it from easy, hopefully fixing things like sponge sounds. Also, where was part 2, lol? I'm glad that I'm glad you addressed this too here. But yeah, I think it's super, super cool to look at the brand new blocks. It's going to be really, really fun to get your hands on these and the new biome, and hopefully by the time this releases, before the end of the year, now we can say with 99% certainty that you'll be have a good time with that. So yeah, I think there is a lot more to talk about here. I would love to go really deep on the keep inventory thing. I would because I think that is the craziest change that Mojang has made in a while. But to keep today's video as brief and simple as possible, we have the brand new beta and preview on Bedrock, and they've more or less confirmed with the update titling and the lack of the experimental toggle that this is going to be coming out very, very shortly. And so we have just 2 updates to go until you're playing around with the Creaking, and one of those is happening in just 10 days time, and the next will be before the end of the year. We'll talk about that when it is the time, but for now, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed my time in Malaysia. I know this sounds silly to a lot of people, because I travel a lot for various reasons, but this was my first, true, traditional holiday, as you probably saw from the times you saw me, in a very long time, and it was a super awkward time for it to be, what with the Pale Guard and everything, but now that it's here on Bedrock, I'd love to talk so much about this update to make up for the lost time, so let's talk about 1.20, 1.50, or the holiday drop over the next couple of days, and let's even play this winter drop live on the channel today or tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.